of the most pleasurable moments that I spend are in my sewing room, my special place. Every week you meet me here with expectations and desires to be a better seamstress or tailor. Even when our projects are small and quick, we want to do our very best. Today, I have the most inspiring projects for you. Some will challenge you, others will simply give you an idea for a quick project. Thank you for joining me today. Let's get sewing. What would you say if I told you that with the exception of the beautiful machine embroidery, this suit was constructed totally on a serger? Don't tell anybody how easy it is. Let's look at this beautiful pink linen suit. Now, the beautiful machine embroidery on the collar was done in a machine that embroiders. This beautiful motif that comes down, very elegant with the white motif on the pink linen blend. More beautiful embroidery and even a pretty machine embroidered motif on the sleeves. Now the serger work that is really fast and easy. These trims, the Victorian trims, are sewn together by serger. And actually, let me show you this wonderful band that goes all the way around the jacket that has serger tucks, the piece with the entredeaux on either side, and this goes all the way around the jacket. And then the skirt is absolutely fabulous. The pieces go on the front of the skirt, the back of the skirt. And since you can kind of see through some of those pieces, let me share with you that the lining on the pieces at the bottom of the skirt is out of a pretty silk organza that's also done in pink. Now, just how easy it is to do this French sewing by serger. The different trims that you use, this is an edging, a Victorian edging. This is a piece of insertion because it does not have a finish on either side. This is another piece of insertion that has entredeaux on either side, but you will see we also have a seam allowance, and that's critical if we're going to do heirloom sewing by serger. This open work piece also has a seam allowance on each side. Now, in order to put the two pieces together, they're folded right sides to right sides, and the serger finishes the edge. Be very careful you don't go into the holes of the entredeaux. Now, after the pieces are joined together, the tucks are just beautiful. Now, they are made on plain fabric though. This is a piece that shows one tuck that has already been made. Then this has been folded back, ready for another tuck, and we're going to serge along the edge of that fold for a tuck. When you get all three of those tucks in, this is what it looks like, and we're ready now to finish completing this beautiful outfit. I'm so glad to have as my guest today my friend Peggy Dilbone. Peggy is an Husqvarna Viking educator. She's also a Martha Pullen licensed teacher. And Peggy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I cannot wait to see. By the way, the suit is just beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Show us how you did that on the serger.
Fast and easy, of course. Well, one of the important things about sewing with the serger is we have to know where the needle's going to sew so that we can make sure we don't eat up our trims. And my foot actually has little marks on there telling me where the needle sews. And I put a little black magic marker on there to see it better.
You put black magic marker on your foot, okay?
So I can see it. But to join the strips together, this is how they look when they're joined. They're beautifully finished. And when we sew the bridging trim, we want to make sure that it's lined up perfectly. So I have it lined up so that the bridging won't cut into the embroidery. And when I sew, I sew so that is right between the two little marks on my foot. And it sews right beside the bridging. Can you see how?
I surely can, where you're not catching the bridging in there.
Right.
Finishes it so perfectly, it's all done in one fell
Exactly,
swoop.
one step.
Of course, Peggy, what we love about the serger too is how fast it is.
And it's finished beautifully.
Okay.
For that. Now then the next thing I wanted to show was how to do those pretty tucks. And of course we wouldn't do them in purple, but it shows up better. But to do the tucks, we actually fold the fabric, and you can use a seam gauge if you want to get an exact measurement. But the fabric is actually folded. And then when we serge it, we're going to put the bridging next to the edge of the presser foot. So when I serge, I'm actually cutting some of the fold off, so I don't have to worry about being really, really accurate. And I cut, see, part of it was cut off, and then it makes this beautiful tuck in the fabric, like that. Now to do the second one, we simply fold the fabric and do the same thing. Right, that little tuck right next to the last tuck that we sewed. And it's cutting off some of the fabric and creating that beautiful tuck.
Well, Peggy, that makes it so much fun to do the heirloom sewing by Serger. Those little tucks and, okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You know what I want to do over here? I want us to look once again at this wonderful jacket with after all of those techniques are done. And really, you just used the two techniques you showed us to make this whole strip?
Yes. The important thing is knowing, as I said, where your needle's going to make the stitch so that you don't sew into the entree and sew into the header, the bridging. And then you can space everything evenly apart for doing that.
And those pretty tucks there, much prettier in white than they are in purple.
Oh, yeah.
Peggy,
Harder
this
to
is
see.
beautiful.
Thanks,
and now
Mark.
Peggy has some sewing inspiration she has brought to share with us. Peggy, I know you have some serger things as well as some machine things here,
Yes,
but
I
tell
do.
us about this wonderful coat hanger.
Well, this is kind of a surprise little accessory piece because it has a zipper that I put in with the serger also. And you can hide your accessories or your jewelry in there in your closet. Nobody knows it's there.
Just
as
hang
well.
clothes over this. No one would ever think to look in there
Exactly.
for jewelry if anybody were, the house were broken into. would it?
Absolutely.
This is so precious too, Peggy. What is this?
I call that a little jewelry bag because it's a little travel accessory package with the pieces on this, but it has little pockets on the outside. This was all constructed with the serger, and then the little drawstring at
Wouldn't
the
it be
top.
cute just to put a little handle on for a little girl's purse?
It'd be precious for a little girl's
Oh,
purse.
I think that
Yeah.
looks like a little girl purse too.
It's so cute.
And this?
That's a cosmetic bag. It's just also has a zipper. You can put cosmetics in there or anything that you'd like. Sewing notions for
Well,
a
that'd be a
sewer.
wonderful, little
Wonderful,
sewing
wouldn't it?
bag as well as a little cosmetic bag
Absolutely.
too. Now, Peggy, you know how much I love smocking.
Yeah.
Tell me the secret on this one.
Okay, this is an embroidered smocking. It's done with the embroidery machine.
The smocking is done on the embroidery machine.
Yes, it is.
Now, what about the little pearls?
The little pearls I actually sewed on by hand.
Well, that probably would. I don't think an embroidery
No.
machine sews on pearls yet, do you?
Not yet.
This is just beautiful, Peggy. If I looked at this from this distance, I would never know that this was done not only on a machine, but done in an embroidery unit. About how long does it take to smock something like that?
About 10 minutes. It
Oh,
doesn't
my.
take very long.
Not
It's
very
very
long at all.
fast.
All right, let me share with
Absolutely.
you. Oh, this is the most wonderful nightgown. I think this uses some of the techniques. Tell us about this, Peggy.
Well, this is also serger. The whole, actually the whole nightgown was constructed with the serger. These are the tucks and joining the different laces and trims together.
You know what I
It's
love
all
that you've done? I love that you've used a scalloped trim and put it together in the middle.
Isn't that pretty touch?
And you know, Peggy, I have some antique pieces that have that very idea. And sometimes they even put a little button to hold it together. It's so pretty to have those scallops in the front.
Good.
And this beautiful blouse. Oh,
Well, this blouse is just some lace shaping on the front. It's embroidery on organza. And when you embroider on the organza, you really don't even need to have stabilizer under there because it tightens very tight in the hoop. And then I've used a bridging technique that I used a special foot for that does that. It separates the laces together, and that is machine stitched.
this is beautiful. It looks as if it is beading.
Yes.
And this was just two pieces of insertion that you stitched together, and you
Yes.
could even run ribbon through that.
Yes, you could.
Oh my.
And then it has some gimp work, and of course the pin stitch and pin tucks.
And I love the fact it has a very tailored straight sleeve, so it isn't too fussy, and yet it's just be wonderful. And by the way, a lot of the European fashion magazines are showing an awful lot of lace this year.
It's a lovely pattern.
Peggy, thank you so much. And now we have some scrapbooking ideas for you. Peggy, Peggy, I'm so excited about your scrapbook pages because they have subjects that my grandchildren really love.
Oh, all grandchildren love them. These are my grandchildren, Martha.
I know.
And I get to show them off, and it's so much fun because I also get to show up the other babies in the house, the four-legged ones that live on the farm. This is our horses. These are my two of my grandchildren. And this is Peyton having a wonderful time. And then the other children with the horses. We have 7 horses, and we have a great time with the horses. But I did some embroidery on a handmade paper. This is actually an embroidered redwork design. And I wrote "Fun on the Farm" with my sewing machine. It was just real easy to do that on the paper. And then this grass is part of something that's coming out very soon, which will be a CD with some embroideries you can use specifically for scrapbooking. Yeah,
All
it was
right.
fun. And here's a couple more pictures of grandchildren doing something they love to do. This is actually, both of these are seven-year-olds, and this is at their dance recital. And this is actually one of our daughters who was 12 at the time and did that. But we have this great ribbon, and I actually did the lettering on this one with my machine and sewed the lace down. I had to have some lace in there just for you. But to do this is just simply gathered ribbon, and I used my gathering foot to do that. And I just simply set it on a long stitch, used the gathering foot, and then sewed right down the center of the ribbon.
Gives a cute little trim, ready just to glue it down or just sew it down.
I actually glued it down because I was afraid if I sewed it that it would mash the gathers down. So I glued it down.
Did you do the machine embroidered toe shoes on?
Actually, I didn't do that. That's something that will be coming, a CD that's going to be coming out with different pieces you can use for scrapbooking. And this is like a stippling stitch. And I used a wavy rotary cutter to cut the piece behind and just sewed the ribbon down. And that's how easy it was.
Well, you know what, Peggy? It's so much fun to use our sewing machines to make these scrapbook pages. And I know our children have all danced, and they all love to go to camp because they get to ride horses at camp. And the beach and all these wonderful boxes of pictures that we have stuffed away.
It's true.
It's fun to get them out and use our sewing machine to make a really spectacular piece.
It was fun to do this. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for being here with me today.
You're welcome, Martha. Thanks for having me.
And next I have some machine embroidery for you. I am so happy to have as my guest today Lindee Goodall. Lindee is Vice President of Creative Designs for Cactus Punch. Lindee, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. Today we're going to talk about hooping, because hooping your fabric accurately is the most important step before you start your embroidery process. If you'll notice, I'm standing up and you're sitting down this week because I really think that you can hoop better if you're standing up. You want to get some leverage. You want to get your whole body involved. So I have a little table that holds my hoop, and what it's going to do is it's going to hold my outer hoop in place so I'm not chasing it all over a table. And then I have it also aligned in the center of this, and this has a groove down the middle, so it lets me see if my fabric is straight. And then we'll just start our process here.
Do you use this little guide every time you
I use it all the time.
Okay.
I like this one because it lays flat on the table. I'm usually working on fabric, not garments. And although you can put a garment over this one, it works so nice when you're working on, say, squares for quilts or a piece of fabric that you're going to cut out and make into a garment. So I'm going to take my stabilizer. This one happens to be a cutaway, and I'm going to tape it in place. Let's just make sure that it gets in my hoop. Then I'm going to take my fabric. We're going to start with a knit. And I'm just going to smooth it into place. Then I'm going to set my hoop in, and I'm going to start at the top and work towards the bottom. Now on this particular hoop, the screw is at the bottom. So you really want to kind of pivot from opposite the screw towards the screw. That was pretty secure. If I had had to bounce on this to get it in, it's too tight. If it just falls in with no pressure, it's too loose. Now, if it were to be too loose, you might want to finger tighten it, but then you need to pop it back out and reseat it, because let's see what happens when we do this. If I loosen my screw and push it in, and then tighten the screw, I'm going to turn it over so you can see this. You won't actually see what's happening, but the hoop is only tightening in this position. It only tightens where the screw is. It doesn't tighten evenly all the way around. So then you no longer have even tension. It's almost like setting in a sleeve where you're easing the fabric right there. So I tightened the screw, so I'm going to pop it back out and I'm going to reseat my fabric. And it popped in. Now I'm going to gently recess it slightly beyond my outer hoop, so I have just a little bit of ridge there. And what that does is it allows the hoop to slide on the stabilizer rather than on the hoop. It also adds just a little bit of extra tension. Now if we look at this fabric, this is a knit and it's hooped so that the fabric is neutral. We don't want to stretch our fabric, because if we start pulling on our fabric in the hoop to make it really taut, you see what's happening?
Yeah, you're going to distort the stripes.
You're going to distort the stripes. That happens whether it's a knit or a woven. You're going to stretch your fabric. If you stretch your fabric in the hoop and then you embroider on it, when it comes out of the hoop, it's going to relax and you'll have puckers. There are other causes for puckers, but that's a primary one. Now, as long as I am using the same fabric and stabilizer, I'm just going to pop it out of the hoop. I'm going to take my next set and I'm just going to hoop that. I'm never going to touch that screw again until I change my fabric and stabilizer combination. Okay?
I think that's fascinating.
Now we have some other fabrics here. This is a shirt weight cotton. You can probably embroider on this with a tearaway. Tearaways tear easily. They get perforated with the needle penetration, so they tear off more easily. Now, a fabric that we use a lot in heirloom sewing is velvet. This one happens to be upholstery velvet, but you do not want to put this in the hoop because you're going to have hoop marks. So with this one, you would probably want to use like a temporary embroidery spray adhesive, hoop just your stabilizer. And we'll do that quickly. And I'm going to need to tighten my screw a bit. We'll put that in there. And then we would spray and then just stick our fabric down. And that would be enough to hold it in place. Same thing with leather. If we do leather or vinyl, we don't want to put that in the hoop. So good embroidery starts with good hooping.
You know what? That is absolutely fascinating. Lindee, thank you so much for sharing that with me and with our viewers.
Thank you, Martha.
And now I have a quilting segment for you, the beautiful Hearts and Stars Quilt, and our technique will be Madeira windows. You are going to love this Hearts and Stars quilt, which combines traditional quilting with heirloom quilting. Now, we have a wonderful technique today called Magic Madeira windows. As you can see, the quilt has all kinds of wonderful techniques on it, including machine embroidery. But the technique I want to share with you today is so easy, which is, you know, I love that word, easy. It's this wonderful Madeira heart. I'm going to show you how to make it with wash-away basting thread. And in behind it, there's a piece of organdy, which has been stippled. Now, that looks very hard, but it's very easy. So let's see how we're going to do this. First of all, I'm going to trace the heart on my top piece of fabric, and I'm going to put two pieces of fabric together. In other words, I need a double fabric. And I will mark the center, and then I'm going to straight stitch around that heart. But there's a very special thread I'm going to use to straight stitch around that heart. I'm going to use wash-away basting thread. This is critical. All right, I straight stitch around the heart, attaching the two pieces of fabric together. After this one straight stitch around the heart, it is critical that I remove the wash-away basting thread from either the top or the bobbin, whichever one you used, but get rid of that wash-away basting thread. That's the last time you want to be using it for this technique. Then after I stitch around with the wash-away basting thread, I trim away the inside of the heart. And as you can see, I've come in here and clipped the curves. It's real critical that this be turned perfectly. And so clipping those curves, including cutting off the point, is a real important thing to do. Now, after I turn it right side out, then I'm going to press it where it just have perfect turns. And the next step is going to be to take spray starch. And I'm going to spray starch, and you can kind of guess what the spray starch is going to do. It's going to dissolve those threads. Spray it pretty wet, and then go back and press it until it is bone dry. It has to be bone dry. Okay, I have one here that's been pressed bone dry, and this is what it looks like. Now I spray starched and quickly pressed it bone dry. Then look what happens. After I have pressed it bone dry, then all I do is pull apart. I cannot wait to show you this. And I have two beautiful Madeira hearts. So you see, I do 2 for 1 here. I have 2 Madeira hearts for that quilt made. Now I'm not quite through with my Madeira hearts because I need to slip something in behind there. But isn't that a wonderful technique for Magic Madeira? The next step is to get a piece of organdy, and I have put a piece of organdy behind one of the Madeira hearts, as well as some stabilizer, because I'm going to use a wing needle and a pin stitch, and I do need stabilizer anytime I use a wing needle. All right, I'm going to Madeira stitch, or you can just zigzag if you don't have a pin stitch on your machine with a wing needle. I'm going to pin stitch the organdy to the heart. And remember, I have stabilizer behind here. Okay, I have this all set up. I'm going to stitch a little bit. I have the 100 wing needle. That's the smallest wing needle. And I have my stabilizer and my organdy. And by the way, this organdy will already have been stippled like we have on our quilt. We just don't have a stipple piece. I just showed you with a plain piece of organdy. I'm doing the pin stitch all the way around. Then, as you can see, I've done that. So what I'm going to do next is we've got one more row of pin stitching to make this look so pretty. So I come out a foot's width, and I'm going to stitch one more row of pin stitching, and then my stippled organdy, and I pretend like that stippled organdy in there, okay? Then I will come in, I will pull away the stabilizer. Well, I've already pulled away the stabilizer. I will come in and cut away the rest of the organdy, the outside pieces of organdy, and then I will have that beautiful stippled Madeira applique window like we have on the quilt. This is really a very easy technique to do. The Magic Madeira has been absolutely wonderful because it's easy, quick, and fast, and you know how much we like that. Now I'd like for you to join me while I share a piece from my antique clothing collection. When you first look at this antique piece hanging here, I bet you will think, well, that is just a beautiful camisole. And yes, that's what we call them today. But this piece was done around 1900, and they were called corset covers. You remember those corsets that women laced up so tightly that literally sometimes they couldn't breathe and passed out. Sometimes they also broke their ribs in order to pull those waistlines in smaller. Oh, I'm glad we don't have those days anymore. Now this has a wonderful scallop around the neckline. All of the embroidery is by hand, and if you will look, there are double buttonholes which are used for beading so the ribbon can run through to pull the camisole together. I want you to look at this magnificently beautiful white on white embroidery design. This was done totally by hand, but of course with today's wonderful sewing machines, this can also be reproduced on machine, and I do love antique embroideries reproduced on a machine. Now you see the scallops go let me move the ribbon, the scallops go all the way down the front, a little bit like Peggy showed you the blouse the nightgown a few minutes ago. Those little scallops go all the way down the front. This is very interesting, the way this seamstress has sewn the waistline. Do you see how the gathers have been pulled in and then the beading has been sewn on the top? So actually, this really fit the lady without the thread, or rather the ribbon, having to pull it up. Now the back is absolutely beautiful also. Another lovely piece of embroidery which goes along with the front one, kind of coordinates with it, is on the center back. You can see the scallops, and once again down at the bottom you see that the gathers have been permanently put in there before the beading, again with entredot on either side, has been sewn on. So many details for this adorable little Victorian corset cover. Thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today. I hope you've had fun, and I would like to invite you to come back next time.